Brighton's a lovely place this time of year. It's cold, it's wet, it's where Liverpool beat Brighton 3-2, but a very different Brighton team, and actually quite a different Liverpool team if you think about it, especially formationally, especially the way they chose to attack, especially, there's so many different reasons. But that is why we need to talk about Liverpool's game at Anfield this weekend against Brighton, and why it is so different to the game that we saw midweek against Brighton, which ultimately finished 3-2, and was a very good game for the likes of Cody Gakpo, and, well, I want to say Luis Diaz as well, but I also want to say there's a couple of other guys in there that I thought had very good games. And then, of course, you've also got the opposite of that, where Jarell Quansah had awkward games, an awkward game, I want to say, but not really a game where you hang your hat on he's a bad player, he's a good player. That guy's got a new contract with the club. I think a lot of people can back him. Of course, I didn't do a review of that midweek. I was away at the time. And broadly, I was really impressed by the way that Liverpool were adapting their tactics. The frustration was obviously the mistakes down at the other end that allowed Brighton back into it, but that also gave people like Jarosz and even someone like Jarell Quansah a really good opportunity to thrive and show that there are some skills in this side that I think go rather underestimated. Alongside that, I also think we had a good midfield performance from the likes of Wataru Endo and Tyler Morton, which I think gives us some confidence that Liverpool are slowly evolving the idea within the squad of what it is that Slot wants and bringing more and more people into that central group of people who are capable of enacting what it is that he wants. Gakpo on one side, we rested Salah on the other, and we had two wide forwards in Luis Diaz and Gakpo, and then of course through the middle, the two creatives, making that kind of line of six, and then the box up front. I don't know, you don't always have to say, everything had to happen in the box in order for it to be good. It definitely enabled Cody Gakpo, it definitely enabled Luis Diaz, but I just think we're going to see a very different Liverpool this weekend. I do kind of wonder, broadly the principles of what Slot does apply in this game, in the same way as they did midweek. But we're going to see probably Szoboszlai, probably a midfield two in the sixth role of obviously Alexis McAllister, but also Ryan Gravenberch, so a very different midfield bed there. And we're also going to see, I'd imagine, Trent on one side, if possible, and we're also going to see, I'd say, Kostas Tsimikas on the other side. And in fact, the quote that we saw, which I thought was quite interesting from Arne Slot in his press conference, when asked about the rotation of Kostas and Robbo, was, I wouldn't say it's a dilemma. There are other positions where we have rotated. It probably also has to do with Robbo's pre-season. He had none. He came back injured from Euro 2024 and he missed almost the entire pre-season. So again, I think a lot of people are writing him off. There are people talking about, using the old Jamie Carragher quote, leave football before football leaves you. I think there's a certain harsh element when people start misapplying quotes. But I've got to admit, in the game against Saka, it did seem as if Andy Robertson and then the offside that he played for Brighton's first opportunity, then they look like glaring errors. They look like things which seem very obvious. They look like the kind of things that actually kind of happened in the Klopp era as well, where it was like, there's a momentary lapse and we're through. But they also now feel so glaring and so frustrating, even though we won, that I think people are going to focus on them more. It's also because there are other strong parts of the team and strong concepts and areas where essentially Slot he's got like a speciality in that area. He knows how to make those guys good. And Klopp had the opposite of that. Well, not the opposite, he got the whole team good, but he knew how to make wing-backs feel defended, feel attacking, feel comfortable in their position. And now it seems as if with the shift in those areas, with the shift in emphasis in the team and, where the ball moves, it does make people like Robbo a little bit more exposed. And so I think teams like Brighton are going to thrive a little bit more. Of course, we're going to see a very different lineup on the weekend for Brighton. I think you probably will see Welbeck starting. You probably will see Rutter. You probably will see Matoma. You probably will see a rotation on the other wing. We're going to see, I've been looking through a couple of their teams here, and broadly they do tend to start, maybe we'll see. It's Ayari? I think broadly we're going to see, if Evan Ferguson starts, there are lots of different options and different shapes that they can apply themselves in. I still think the challenge is the same for Liverpool. And of course, it's going to be a very different centre-back pairing from Jarell and Gomez to, Konate and Van Dijk. Doesn't mean, by the way, that they're necessarily better. It just means that there is a very different unit there. Of course, it's also a very different goalkeeper. Jarosz is technically number 2 right now because of Alisson's injury, and we are going to see him probably rotated back out for Geller. So that's a very different back line that I think Brighton face, probably a very different base of midfield. But again, we'll have learned how the principles mesh against each other. And, I actually think it looked a bit more like a pre-season than anything else. But actually, I think what we did see was the killer instinct of Cody Gakpo, how Diaz is a great meshing player, and how Szoboszlai and Curtis Jones, there is something there that maybe if we want to be a little more front foot, we can get out of them. But I don't think we're going to see that when we come down to this game. I think we're going to see a much more conventional Liverpool team. The concern, I guess, for me is there is this debate at the moment around Darwin Nunes. There are the big rumours, of course, around like whether we sign another striker or another forward in January. Chiesa is still injured. Harvey Elliott is still injured. Who else? Who was the final injury name in there? And of course, Diogo Jota is still injured. That leads to a lot of talk of, well, we do need someone else in that front line. We will definitely need someone else in that front line if Mo Salah isn't going to be signing his new contract or isn't even offered a new contract by Liverpool. And, maybe that is Marmoush. Maybe there are a couple of other people we're looking at right now. Maybe Liverpool do have some other options on the table that we might end up moving for in January or might end up trying to bring in. But Gakpo, at the moment, for me, is one of the players in the team with a signature move. It's that move onto the inside and shoot across the goalkeeper. Across the goalkeeper is a very weird one because very often it needs to go sort of across and around the goalkeeper. Gakpo seems to almost go through the keeper a lot of the time, and it seems like much more of a PSV type move than a Liverpool move. Of course, we've seen goals in this shape from him at Liverpool, but where we knew that they were coming from, and these long shots, these kind of what feel like quite impossible, unusual physics shots, they kind of they look very weird. You're not used to seeing Luis Diaz do that, even though Luis Diaz has scored those kind of goals. We kind of saw that from Mane, but never in this angle. And so when Gakpo does it, it feels almost a bit like a cheat code. It feels a little bit like Liverpool. It's tactical, but it's actually a very individual quality that he brings to the game. And it's something which really puts the opposition on the back foot. It put the opposition on the back foot when we saw that against Thomas Partey. We saw how fearful Thomas Partey was of that. And we saw how different Arsenal played once, Liverpool shifted that front line. But we also see that there is the other side of that with Darwin Nunes. I think Darwin Nunes has very strong suits to his game, but there are also some weaknesses or blind spots or soft parts of his game that I think Liverpool would be a little bit frustrated by. His budding and I would say blooming relationship with Mo Salah is obviously really advantageous, and Salah is a great player to collab with. But on the other side, I think on the weekend before against Arsenal, Diaz felt a little bit more isolated and as if he wasn't quite able to get into the game. That was frustrating for me to watch, and I did often wonder whether that was because of the way that Nunes was playing. Very intense, a lot of visible things on the ball, but broadly, I do wonder if when we're playing someone like Jota or when we've got a striker who is slightly different to Nunes and maybe a bit more 360 rather than the 180 element, that's a very soft criticism. He's still a great striker of the ball, he's still a great player, but I guess we have to break this Liverpool team down somehow. I wonder if Liverpool will become a better team. We've stopped playing Gakpo through the middle. He is now very much a left winger for Liverpool, even though he kind of counts as a wide forward. And I think on the weekend, we're probably going to see Diaz, Salah, Szoboszlai and Nunes, and then the two, and then the four that we would normally expect back there, probably Trent in there. Probably Costas, actually, so maybe that's not one of the ones we expect, and Kelleher back in. I think we've got to be ready for an adaptable, probably more aggressive, probably more engaged Brighton team than the one we saw in midweek, because obviously Brighton's priority is going to be here rather than in the League Cup. I think that only makes sense. Brighton have got quite a difficult run of it now. They're about to be away to us, then at home to Man City. Then they're going to play Bournemouth, Southampton, Fulham. So it's difficult games leading into this. I think what they're going to want to do is try and snatch some points away. And I think a lot of people at the moment are saying, you've got to win every one of your games. A draw does feel like a loss right now. And after looking at the Premier League table last weekend, after City went ahead, and especially if we look at the fact that Man City in their coming games have Bournemouth, then Sporting, which will obviously be an interesting. I wonder if Sporting, before we see Amorim move to United, will beat them. Then they play Brighton, which is a difficult one. Then they play Spurs post-international break, so they'll be a very different team. What I'm saying is we need to keep this pace with those guys. And there is a lot of flux at the moment. I think January we will see some changes at Liverpool. I think we will see Liverpool trying to get on the front foot on the offensive. If someone like Trent is to leave, I think Van Dijk will sign a new contract. I think we'll see how it plays out with Salah. There's a lot to play there, and I think there's a lot for Slot to keep a handle on, but also with a half an eye on the Leverkusen game. Leverkusen hot off the back of playing a Brighton team. That's two very challenging technical sides. Even though Leverkusen aren't having the great season in the way that they were last year, I think Liverpool are going to have half an eye on that. I think we bring in Gakpo in that one, although I think it's how Slot judges those matchups, whether he thinks it's better to do it in Champions League or better to do it in the Premier League. And I think then we also see how he judges rotating in this side. Will Curtis Jones come back in? I think we'll probably start Szoboszlai, because Jones played in that game out and started with Szoboszlai. I think we'll probably then see, actually, will we end up seeing Szoboszlai in the other game and Jones in this game because we want to control the midfield? Maybe we will see Jones started in this game, actually. And then we'll see him coming back in against Leverkusen. The rotation continues. Let me know what you guys think your starting 11 is. It's a fascinating one. I'm really enjoying the reframing of the problems that Liverpool have in the press conferences by Arne Slot. As much as we've got a young, sexy manager in Ruben Amorim coming in, sometimes it's nice to have the solid, sexy guy. Sometimes you can be young and sexy. Sometimes you can be solid and sexy. Do you know what I'm saying? Anyway, let me know what you guys think in the comments below, and I'll see you guys in a couple of hours. Much love. Bye.